So I was checking my firewall logs and I found that Spotify had initiated a peer-to-peer connection. And so that made me start thinking, well, Spotify is doing some weird things that I did not know about. And so I'm not sure how many of you guys know this, but big tech is doing things behind your back that maybe you're not necessarily aware of. And so I just kind of wanted to take a moment to bring some awareness to these things. For example, if you've ever used VS Code, here's a practical example for you. You can go and see in VS Code for yourself that there's actually telemetry data being collected upon what you use VS Code. And that's probably not even the worst of it. If you've ever installed VS Code Server, if you really think about it, how does VS Code Server work? Well, it goes into your server after you provided a connection details, and then it will install a bunch of software on your server without telling you about all the packages it just installed to do VS Code Server on your secure shell connection. And so if Spotify is doing that and they're behind it doing peer-to-peer connection and VS Code Server is also doing such things, you might begin to turn your eyes towards other services that are technically large and convenient, like DuckDuckGo. Well, the unfortunate part about things like DuckDuckGo, especially because we know that Google is such an angel about your privacy. Oh man. So if none of those guys are good for privacy either, then, hey, I use DuckDuckGo for search. Oh boy, look at me. Like, DuckDuckGo, if you read into it, I actually just found this out because I didn't know about this, but actually DuckDuckGo, they send your data to Microsoft with Microsoft advertisements. Now they can try to kick as much dirt over top of it as they want, but do some research. Don't hate on me, but definitely go and look for yourself, right? The big tech companies are doing some really shady stuff behind your back that you're not necessarily aware of. And it's up to us to hold the hand up to them and say no. So what can we do about this, right? We want to make sure that we're constantly taking action. The one thing that most people would see it as almost wrong, but it is actually right, is to just take your privacy, like, first and foremost. And people say they don't care about your privacy. Well, yes, you do. If you don't care about privacy, then don't lock the door to the bathroom, or, don't lock the door to your house or your car. I mean, you want a level of privacy from other people. It's the same reason why we lock our houses, we lock our cars, we secure our accounts with two-factor authentication. And by allowing things like Spotify to fly, that's just wrong. I don't even think YouTube does that, and YouTube is like popular and provided by Google anyway. So what we can do about it is we begin to migrate towards services that we can self-host. And for some people, that's not always necessarily doable, but I would argue that it probably is with a little bit of technical knowledge. And so your greatest weapon instead can just be to educate yourself to the absolute maximum. And when you educate yourself, you'll begin to see the other things that you probably can't unsee. Like, once you see these things that go on behind the scenes, the amount of telemetry that gets sent on Windows, you'll begin to slowly hate Windows. When you begin to see all the telemetry being collected with VS Code or with AI extensions you like to install into those, then you won't like those either. If you ever install your own DNS server and you see all the network traffic, I mean, if it bothers you that Brave knows that you are connected to the internet through their browser, then maybe you shouldn't use Brave. Like, I have personally seen, because I've installed WireGuard and taken a look for myself, Brave sends out an occasional ping to their servers unencrypted to let them know that you are using the Brave browser and that you have a active window open. And when you look it up online, it's the same thing. People are saying, oh, yep, that's how Brave tells how many people use their browser. There's the Spotify stuff. Spotify comes in and they say, we're not ashamed of how Spotify works. We are actually proud of it and embrace it openly, when really it's not open. They don't really talk about that up front. I mean, and it's a service that sometimes we pay for. And when you don't pay for a service, then you are the product. I mean, have you ever wondered why Google Maps is free? Why a service as amazing as Google Maps is, right? Let's think about that for a second. Why in the world would they want to help you free of charge? And by the way, no watch an ad before this service type thing, connect you and guide you. It's simply to collect more data. They're tracking you. They're actively using your location to help other people. And then when you do use their service, they're recommending you things. And businesses, they have the option to pay so that they can be advertised to you. And so it's very important that we're conscious of these things as we're using the internet. I think there's a lot of things that we could dive into, but I think I'm going to keep this short. My recommendation, firstly, would probably be to harden your browser. You can harden your browser. There's some really great guides on privacy guides. I'll put a link to that in the description for hardening your web browser. It tells you about like all the different web browsers and the ways that you can harden them to make them more secure. And that's always a good first step. And the second step, and what I would recommend, is that you go out and you educate yourself on how the internet works. And then when you do that, I encourage you, my friends, take a look at your WireGuard traffic. Like, just open it up. You don't necessarily have to be trying to be malicious. Open up WireGuard, or open up, like, run your own DNS locally in a virtual machine and funnel all of your DNS queries through it and watch what all your computer asked for when you run through that, and tail the logs inside of Linux and watch them. See what you connect to that you're not intentionally connecting to right now. The amount of things, I think you would just be completely mind blown, and you would probably become Amish and start living out in the country at a certain point. But in all reality, if you're not going full Amish, then you need to learn these things. And that's some of the stuff I'm interested in covering here. So if that interests you, then maybe you should subscribe to the channel and learn from all the mistakes that I have made, and learn from the mistakes of other people. And in general, just learn as much as possible, because knowledge is truly the one thing that the internet provides that a lot of people, it's readily available, but people don't tap into it. They'd rather consume or watch endless amounts of content that doesn't benefit them in any way. I mean, we've all had our anime streaks. I've been there myself, so I encourage you, go out, go learn something today, and let's go get some coffee privately.